What does it really cost a company when a cheap part fails, delays production, triggers compliance issues, or puts safety at risk? And how do you build a supplier relationship that prevents that in the first place? Welcome to Industry Ignited, the podcast where we spotlight the leaders and builders advancing manufacturing, innovation, and operational excellence across the industrial world. I'm your host, Dr. Leanne Aguilar. And today I'm joined by David Thuro, CEO of Thuro Metal Products, a fully integrated supplier of precision parts and assemblies serving aerospace, defense, automotive, and industrial equipment markets worldwide. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So David, tell me about how you got started. I know your parents founded Thuro Metal Products in 1965, and then you started actually working in the business at a very young age. And at some point you returned to college and became a plant manager at just 22 years old. What did growing up inside a machine shop teach you that no textbook could?
Wow, that's a big question. So I think, time management. I think what made my upbringing a little bit different than my peers, if I think about myself and my peers, sort of as a control group, I was working and exposed to adults at a pretty young age. And I know if you go to a college setting, yes, your professors are mentors. But for me, I was always the youngest with many people that were generally 10, 20 years older than me, including the biggest influence in my life was my parents. And I spent way more time with them than the average person would, not at home. I had a lot of friends and stuff, and we were very independent, our generation. But working with them, what I got a perspective was life could be 10 to 20 years from now, or even 40 years from now as a young person. And my dad would drill into my head the importance of time.
Uh-huh.
What did I learn in the beginning that I couldn't learn in a textbook? I could see from being around people that were further along on life's journey, what the consequences were of certain decisions, And so I think I became a little bit more mature in my decision making at an earlier age by being around people that were, again, further along on life's journey.
Yeah. So were you actually working in the machine shops and in the company at a young age? Were you helping?
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah. By the time I was 14, I would work in the summer full time. I'd work a 45, 50-hour week. So by the time I was fairly young, I could, working a full day wasn't an issue. That took a little bit of an adjustment. By the time I graduated from college and when I was 22, I had 4 years of full-time experience working in a profession.
Yeah, right. And gaining skills. And like you said, having exposure to adults and other professionals, seeing the processes and the procedures and just learning every aspect of the business from the inside out. Now, you've said you love the entrepreneurial nature of this industry. You only get paid after you make the part at an agreed price. And it has to be right the first time. Right. So there's not a lot of room for error here.
You don't get paid twice.
You don't get paid twice. Right. What's the moment in your journey when you realize I'm not just a machinist, I'm building a business?
I would say that the art of running a business, I was exposed to that at a very young age. My parents would come home and talk about finances. I knew numbers bigger than any kid knew as a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old or 13-year-old from hearing the conversation. So it was full immersion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I never looked at myself as a machinist. I was being purposefully exposed to every area of the operation, intentionally, specifically by my father. I would be exposed to all areas of the business, never in one place too long. So I became a machinist when I was 20, when I was setting up for a brief stint some of the most modern equipment we had. But I was quickly then moved into the operations side and trained people wherever I was to do what I was doing, and then I would move on. So there was never a light bulb that went off. I always thought I would be working for myself, learning how things are quoted, how things are engineered, the design of the tools, the quality aspects of it, the marketing, stuff like that. I got a great exposure to that by intention. So it was never that I was going to be a machinist. That was just part of the journey, because I need to understand what it is to be a machinist, but I don't have to be, at this point, they're way better than me, the guys on the floor. So I don't know. I can't tell you there was a clear transition. I knew from the beginning it was about making something for less than selling something for more than it costs to make.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you had the big picture from the start. So was your dad preparing you all along to take over one day? Was that always the end game?
Yeah, I believe, I was the last one. And, there was a lot of pressure because the hopes were kind of pinned on me. And they didn't tell me you have to do this, but they said, you don't do this, we're selling this. So it was
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right. So you didn't have the
yeah,
entire pressure on your your back, but
no, but
yeah.
I loved what we did. And I loved the people that, I loved the people that were working here. They're like family.
Yeah.
And I love the challenge. I guess, we like challenges, and there's always a lot of challenges.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think in business in general, especially as an entrepreneur. Yeah. Now, you described a major shift in the 1990s, computing capacity made done in one CNC manufacturing more achievable, raw material in, finished part out. How did that technology inflection point change your competitive strategy?
Well, I'll tell you how it changed me. First of all, it hooked me into the business. It was so interesting to be involved in that, right? In new technology and being at the ground on the ground floor of rolling that out. It helped us really get to a very profitable place. I'll tell you, how did it change the business strategy? When we were able to start running our shop lights out by the mid 90s, it provided capital for us to grow. So I would say we were always profitable to some extent, but the technology and the automation allowed us to lower substantially the cost to make certain items and go into new markets, and it really affected the bottom line. And we integrate technology, and I spend a lot of time figuring out when is the time to get in, and you don't know, and only in retrospect will you
Right.
know. I call it the bleeding edge or the leading edge. And, there's times we've been on the bleeding edge. And at that point, the technology and what it could do and the price point was just right, where if you applied it properly and scaled it a bit, it became easier to make money because you were now taking more and more of the labor equation out. Everyone who's in business knows that the more we can do with less human intervention, the more stable a process is and the more predictable the outcome is.
Yeah. So were you scaling at the same time, like bringing on more
Well,
customers
it
and
helps to
yeah.
scale. When you can bring on technology and have a fairly quick ROI, it's to more than half of what we earn at the company we reinvest. And so, what did the technology shift do? Well, first of all, it got me totally, involved in the business because when I started, I said, I want to see if I can make money at this. My dad, he had a living. There's a difference between earning a living and building a life.
Uh-huh.
And I guess I wanted to aspire more than having a job and paying the bills to building something and ultimately then being able to do what I want to do, which you come back to what I like to do is I like to do this. I like to
Yeah.
do other things too,
Right.
but creating and implementing technology is something that I love to do, and it's practical. So it's not for the sake of oh, that's cool. Well, it creates value and it creates velocity on value, and the technology allowed us to gain more profitability and grow the business.
Yeah. So looking back, what were the most important leadership lessons you learned as you moved from doing the work yourself to building a company where, as you said, half your time is spent building people?
So it's really defining what right looks like. Setting. I always like of late we say a lot. Start with the end in mind. So
Hmm.
always know what you want to accomplish. That's where we dream and we think. Analyze and have good thoughts about an understanding of the present state first, and then envision a future, and then involve people in their input, in their ownership into moving us from the present state to the future state. Change management needs to be there needs to be a lot of action. We like to build prototypes around here, come up with a concept, keep it simple, do some experimentation, come back. This aerospace standard talks all about plan, do, check, act. I mean, we do that all day long. And we
Yeah.
have a database of what worked and what didn't work and experience with certain types of materials, coatings, you name it. And when we come across a new program that we have most of the art down, but there may be one or two new things we have to develop to make the project a go, figuring out quickly how to test different theories and learn. I mean, I love the art of surprise, right? And sometimes what we think will work gives us a lot of fits and starts, and what we would think never works until we actually attempt to do it works much better than we had planned. So growing is a lot of experimentation. It's a lot of hypothesis and then experimentation and
Right.
then adjusting, and that's how we learn. And so, that's one of the things I love to do with my
Yeah.
team.
So for those who aren't familiar with Turo metal products, can you explain exactly what it is you manufacture and your process?
So we're experts in what's called bar automatic machining. Although we do other things, we have four core technologies in our companies. Three of the four core technologies start with a 12-foot bar of material that goes into a high production type lathe and has multiple axes. And we cut bars that are as small as 3/32 or even an eighth of an inch in diameter up to four inches in diameter. We also then have this area called milling where, the metal is fixtured, it's in plates, it's in strip, and the tools whirl around the parts. So that's milling, but we're experts in turning. We're also very good milling. We started back in the mid 60s, turn is doing production turning on what's called automatic screw machines. By the 90s, there was the whole evolution from mechanical,
Hmm.
things moved in a mechanical way, cams and levers and things like that, to encoders, ball screws, and a control, and you want to move the tool into the part by half a thousandth of an inch. Back in the day, you had a dial
Yeah.
and an indicator. Now you on the control, you tell it in basically very precise positioning, and the ability with CNC machines to make much more complex parts. With the mechanical designs, you had limitations within the mechanics, and you could not have as much complexity. So you had to do then multiple machining or multiple handling operations.
Right.
And so CNC allowed us to do done in one. It
Mm-hmm.
took not every part, even with CNC, do we do for certain reasons, done in one, but more and more, we took parts that took 3 and 4 operations, and we're able to, through the CNC machining with multiple axes, we can machine all sides of the part
Right.
and run out of, on the oldest machines, there was a camshaft, and you had 360 degrees of revolution, and the part had to be done. And so you only had so many degrees. With code, some parts could take 20, 30 minutes to machine, with the
Right.
memory we have, and some of our milling machines have, 80 tools in them in a magazine. So we could hypothetically take a super complex. I don't think we've ever used all 80 tools on one part. What we
Yeah.
do is we have multiple jobs set up. We change the fixture and we call it up, and it may use 10, 15 tools on
Oh,
a
wow.
specific part, 20 tools. So,
Yeah.
that's what we do. I mean, we've started with the technology available at the time, and then we're always upgrading as it made sense to invest.
Yeah. And I know you serve two distinct markets. You have a higher volume, lower mix, automotive and industrial, and then also the higher mix, lower volume, aerospace and defense. How do you balance those two worlds operationally without compromising quality or delivery?
This is where we've arrived. Contract review is different on the aerospace and defense side. It's probably for an aerospace and defense customer because the purchase order is about 20 pages long. All
Yes.
the terms and conditions, and where in more the industrial side or automotive side, even, it's much simpler, So the machining is pretty much similar. I can't tell you the machining is dramatically different. That's not really where things uh, differ, but it's really on the contract review side,
Hmm.
well as on at the end. We have created different contract review departments and different even sales teams. It's even the pricing is completely different between them. Um, there's more administrative cost in the aerospace and defense. So the people that are doing the estimating, they're from that discipline, from that field.
Right.
People doing the contract review have to have much more training. Then the people that do the final quality assurance, as well as final touch, final packing, final shipping, they have to have a higher level of training.
Mm,
There's a higher emphasis on documentation, certifications. The product, of course, in every aspect, whatever the market is, has to work. But in the aerospace and defense side, part of the validation is through the documentation, you
right.
know, that we
Yeah.
create from the reports and from the certifications. There's also on the aerospace and defense market often more what we call OSP, outside processing, which is post machining.
Hmm.
There's also often more special treatment of the raw materials. So the purchasing VMI vendor management is much more of a cost, right, or skill, whatever term we want to use, that you need to work in the aerospace and defense market. For automotive and industrial, we do some outside processing,
Hmm.
heat treating, but it seems as if from the administrative side, there's a lot less. So when we contract review has to be thought of totally different, as well as final inspection, certification, and even how we pack. The parts are usually more expensive, so the care and handling, and even the sensitivity to any kind of surface blemishes when something goes into an airplane, into a jet engine.
Right.
There's a higher aesthetic even than
Yeah.
something that may feed a farm animal.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now you've carved out a niche where quality is non-negotiable. The
Mhm.
first part is right. And the last part is right, like we were talking about. There's no room for error here.
Mhm.
What systems, disciplines, and culture practices make that level of repeatability possible over decades long product life cycles?
So one thing that helps us to do that, achieve that, is we started in the birth of the company, or 10 years within the birth of the company. We started making tube fittings for military aircraft. That was metal to metal seals. So that customer, I remember as a kid, I remember as a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, my parents talking about rejections from Air Equipment Resistaflex. We still deal on that product to this day. And having a customer that was so demanding, set the bar and the tone. Now, the thing that I admired most about my father and what he built, he never gave up. He was relentless in pursuing, the solution. And in the 70s and 80s, it was very common for, they would ship out these connectors, these nuts, these bodies, and they'd all come back. And
Oh,
we would hand to Burham, and that's still in our DNA. I mean, we're so good at making clean, really clean parts with no burrs. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of our peers maybe were making plumbing parts.
mm-hmm.
I mean, he jumped right into the most challenging. We were making everything out of titanium. So, he always started with the greatest challenge. He didn't start here and then it wasn't, this continuous improvement thing. Right away, we're making these tube fittings for the Air Force in high volume
Right.
at titanium. I mean, he tells me this story. I wasn't there. It's probably 1972 when he cut, he got the first order for these parts, and he never machined titanium. But he was a tool maker, a machine builder. He knew whatever it was, he would figure it out. He remembers watching the drill go into the part, and the drill was literally disintegrating.
Oh my goodness. I was going to say it's
You
a
know,
hot metal, right?
and some people, for him, and I love that about it, that was game on. That
Yeah.
was that. This is going to be a challenge, but
Need a stronger drill bit. Yeah.
how he figured out exactly how to sharpen the drills, the web of the drill, the type of drill. He said it's game on, So he loved the challenge. He started right out of the gate with probably one of the most demanding, jobs you could try and make in production, for one of the
Right.
most demanding applications out of a very demanding material. So he set the bar high. So that still permeates. I mean, by the early 80s, we were making a lot of, things for fuel systems. Fuel injection was growing, and the defense was up and down with budgets, right? So then we went into other really mission critical type of components where, they had the most stringent standards on the workmanship, the part workmanship. So
Yeah.
we've been doing it for 50 years, 60 years, and there was a lot of okay, get it out, and it was pretty good, but not good enough. And so we got our homework back a lot in the beginning and hung in there and didn't give up and throw in the towel and say, we can't do this, and figured out the tooling, the gauging, the processing, and that's still that DNA is still part of who we are today.
Keep bringing on the challenges, huh? Right. Yeah. So Turo also helps customers reduce risk and cost tied to hazardous materials, especially lead, by recommending lead-free alternatives for steel, aluminum, and brass, and verifying composition with XRF. What are the most common hidden compliance surprises you see customers face, and how do you help them avoid them?
Yeah, so lead has been, it's interesting. Lead has died down a bit, but lead became a really important thing, especially as we were exporting product to Europe and making, there was an evolution. Like I told you with titanium, we had to figure out how to, has been added for years to make the chip formation and machining much more favorable to the problem we have when we cut metal. We do subtractive manufacturing because we have to remove metal. And the easier the metal flows away from the part, the more tool life we get and the more consistency we get in the machining process. So,
Right.
lead came out of our materials in the last 20 years. Like I told you, we figured out how to machine titanium. And I remember a few times we would go with some no lead versions of material we've been making. We'd put a batch in the machine. The first batch would arrive and all the tools would break. And then we would go back. And we make the tools in house. We would, we're experts at making cutting tools, and we would have to test and adjust the geometry. So that's what we do. So hidden compliance, was lead, right? We've had a few issues. We've had to buy an XRF so we can actually check coatings and stuff because of Prop 65 requirements in California. Some of our parts are used by consumers. So, hidden compliance today, beyond REACH and RoHS and stuff like that, we're required to know what's in our materials, even though we don't choose the materials. We're designed to print company. I don't think I mentioned that. Our customers give us exactly what they want. Even under our quality standard, we don't have design authority. We do a lot of DFM and help them as they design, but they own the design, they own the material. We have to make it exactly to their specification. So to that point, we have to often give them advice, and they do require, there's now, I think, 258 substances of very high concern. And for us, lead is in machining is the most common substance of very high concern. So we have to disclose to them, in the coatings and stuff like that. So for us, the hidden compliance was substances of very high concern, and then needing to know and tell them, even in the materials they spec, that it has a certain amount of lead that's beyond 1/10 of 1%. That's usually the threshold.
Okay.
So in the last 5 years, it's mostly been substances of very high concern that, depending on your product mix, being aware of what may be in the product. Although it's not illegal, it's more the disclosure,
Got it. Yeah, and you mentioned you're known for DFM, which is the design for manufacturability, consultations that result in launches under budget and ahead of schedule. What's an example of a DFM conversation that changed everything? Cost, timeline, manufacturability, or quality?
We try and give customers, one of the customers we do a lot of DFM with, reverse engineers components for the fuel injector aftermarket. So, the OEM doesn't give them the specs. And so we work with them a lot, and we've helped them eliminate the need to grind certain features. Machining has gotten more and more precise, and the tooling has gotten better and better. We're achieving much tighter tolerances and much smoother finishes. So, and very precise components in machining. Often back in the day, there was a lot more grinding. You would machine it oversized, you would heat, you would even sometimes then surface treat it, and then you would put it through a grinding machine where every part had to be loaded. So I think in the last 5 years, with more than one customer, we've been able to look at their process and say, okay, I see that's the final requirements. Because sometimes they do give us not, they let us see everything. They let us see maybe sub drawings or not quite complete drawings. And then here's the final drawing. And we say, okay, that you want us to make a blank. That's the final size and finish on this surface that we know gets pressed into something. We can tell by the notes. we can machine that. We don't have to grind. Oh, really? You can machine it? Yeah, we can machine it. Oh, well, okay. So we'll run 1,000 pieces and then they'll check it. We'll check it in our lab. They'll check it in their lab. Oh, yeah, it has the same roundness, meets the requirements of the ground part, and they eliminate a whole operation. So, yes, when we
Hmm.
can eliminate through advances in machining and technology, yes, we can eliminate not only more machining ops, but we can also eliminate secondary processing. And again, the most common example that I've seen of late is grinding,
Hmm.
eliminating the need to grind surfaces because we've advanced our capability and we're able to even machine to lesser tolerant or tighter tolerances and smoother finishes.
Okay, so it's like you're brought the drawings, you brought the parts, it's already designed, but then you're able to go in and consult on how to actually manufacture it and what the best process is for saving time and costs. And like you said, if it's a grinding or if it's just the um, ho-
Honing happens inside the part, grinding
uh-huh,
happens outside.
on the
So
outside, honing or the grinding. Yeah.
saving these abrasives, they both use abrasives. That's the commonality. With machining being able to get to the same level of quality that an abrasive
Uh-huh.
surface where they have very low rates of metal removal but achieve very smooth finishes. Doing that with a machining process saves handling, saves cost.
Okay. Now, you said something that's incredibly relevant in these times. Done right and on time always wins over done cheap in the long run. How
Mhm.
do you help OEMs and procurement teams quantify the real cost of cheap?
That's really difficult. They often have to learn the hard way. I wish we had PowerPoints. So we have to be patient. We have to stay by, you have to be true to yourself. We never sell ourselves cheap,
Yeah,
knowing that some will get it and some won't get it. And some would much rather ignore the true cost of ownership or the total cost of ownership and focus on, I got a great deal. I got,
yeah.
I got a great deal. Buying this cheap, right?
And then
And
they come back and then you do it the right way.
exactly,
Yes.
it happens
All
to
the
that.
time. Yes.
So you stay by your mantra. We don't overcharge.
You're right.
We make a reasonable profit. I'm not. We have a long term perspective, but
Yeah.
we will we will work hard not to say no. It's not just about having an order; it's about doing it. We can't do it right for the price. We're not gonna. Back in the day, years and years ago, sometimes we would try and fit into the price
Hmm.
by trying to go faster. You can't. You have to do it right. You have to. If you try and rush or cut any corners,
Yeah.
and that's what people try and do. Everyone's got to make a profit, but people that try and fit the process into the price instead of saying, well, this is the right process and it's as lean as it's going to get with the technology we have.
Right.
We're not wasteful, but that's the process. And we can't skip steps. And if you, we there are customers that they'll take 20% less, pay 20% less and have 3%, 5% fallout
Hmm.
and 100% check every part themselves. They're fine with that. And if that's what they want, we don't want to be their customer.
Right.
We're not going to ship 3 to 5% out. It's not who we are.
But they're still paying for it somewhere. So it might not be the dollars up front, but like you said, it's costing them time. It's costing them parts and there's fallout, like you said. So yeah,
And check every part 100%. And there's
yeah,
risk
yeah. And
because
risk. Uh-huh.
100% inspection is not 100% accurate. I've done
Hmm.
plenty of 100% inspection in my life, and they have studies on that. So yes, there's risk in product failure in the field and loss of reputation. But look, Leanne, they have to discover that themselves.
Yeah. Wow. I know. And you're right. Sometimes they have to learn the hard way and then they come back. But when they come back, then they get it. And then they're the best customers ever, right?
Agreed.
Because they know better and they're not going to do it the hard way again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, David, you work with mission critical parts, fuel systems, hydraulics, aircraft components, where traceability and material integrity are essential. What does full transparency look like in your world? And what should buyers demand from any supplier in this space?
So, I mean, full transparency, I mean, obviously they look at the cert package, right? They look at we do what's called even for aerospace customers, there's the pre-production approval process. So the risk is so high for any of us to make a mistake and overlook something that we often, although we don't design, we take a customer's tabulated drawing, which may have, 10 different part numbers on it, and we'll break it down to the parts we're making, if we're not making them all, into our drawings, so people don't have to interpret whether it's the machinist or the person doing the inspection in process or final of what is required. So when we launch a program, they even know our cycle times. We have to do run at rates. In automotive, you shut a line down and the cost is tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars per hour that someone has to pay.
Right.
And it could be us. So we are very transparent. The last thing we want to do is our IP, we don't give them our tool designs. Our IP is our tool designs. Our tooling, the way we design the tooling,
Mm-hmm.
that's our secret sauce. That's our IP, how we lay out the tooling. We don't necessarily tell them how we sequence it, but they know they have access to the operation prints we use, our inspection reports, all our certifications, our cycle times to not just make sure we can make the part to print, but that we have the capacity. In some of our contracts, we have to maintain certain extra capacity. We welcome our customers. Used to be back in the day, we didn't do it, but you didn't want to show them what you were doing.
Right. Yeah.
And I love 2026 in a way because it's so competitive that our customers were allowed to walk their floor, look at everything they're doing. They come in, we welcome them. You only learn by opening up.
Yeah. Interesting. And that's just a recent change?
I'd say in the last 10, 15 years, we've been very transparent. I think we were pretty progressive with wanting to partner with companies. And the only way you can have a true partnership is to actually know each other's vulnerabilities
Yeah.
and strengths.
Right. No, that's true.
And
Yeah.
so I think we always were a little bit ahead of the curve, but they may take that and use it against us. I mean, there used to be that, I don't know, bit of paranoia. But I mean, look, the internet has made everybody, I mean, people are way too open.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's leveled the playing field in a lot. And I think AI even more so now, right? So it's like,
Agreed.
yeah. Yeah. And so transparency really is the only way to go because they're going to find out anyway. So you might as well just tell them. And then there's that level of trust that you've built because they're, you're being open with them. So it's, might as well.
Yeah, I mean, with sharing information as an ought to need no basis, but you're going to start making a critical part. You want to go visit them. You want to see exactly how they're receiving it, inspecting it, the exact application.
Yeah.
You welcome that. I mean, one of the things with one of the things I've learned, and sometimes we haven't done this because we were shipping a product to, Poland, go visit anytime you have any type of substantial program.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go and crawl all over it and see how they're consuming it and using it and talk to the people and get lessons learned. I mean, with full transparency, anytime we get a project or a program, we want to ask you lessons learned. We want access to their database for rejections.
Absolutely. I mean, but that makes you better and that helps, them in the long run too. So you can modify your processes
Correct. So it's called lessons learned. So what is honesty? It's sharing experience.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned offshore competition exists mainly in low quality, non-mission critical commodity work. What's your view on how American precision manufacturers win today? And where do we truly compete? And where should we stop trying?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, we've decided, not to chase price. And some of our peers that are not, that aren't mission critical, they partnered with people in China because the market doesn't require the market's price focused.
Mm-hmm,
More
right.
than it is, quality first. So I can't even tell you, anecdotally, we haven't purchased product from China, right? Here anecdotally, we quoted some check valves and this is where I heard, 3 to 5% fallout's okay. But your price, which we thought was, every time we've quoted to people that were buying offshore, we were usually the most competitive stateside.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be offshore, they have raw material. I don't know if it's subsidized, how they buy steel, at 50 to 60% less than what we pay for it, sometimes 100% less.
Wow.
So, I can't compete with that. I mean, back in at the height of the insanity, back in the mid 2000s, we were often asked to quote a product that the material here costs less than what they wanted, costs more than what they wanted to pay for it. There was
Yeah.
$1 of material and they wanted to pay 80 cents.
Like zero margin, like negative margin.
And
Yeah.
some of they were like, you want to lose this $1 million of business? Yeah, I do want to lose this.
Yeah, right. You want
I
to help me
do.
pay for my stuff? Right.
And it was, back it was really wild back like 20 years ago. I mean, it's tamed itself
Mm,
quite a bit. We were like, we're going to have to make things, now that fly. And we said no, the work went away. And when we had to invest into much more robust quality management systems, and New York State helped us with that. And I called it higher ground management. This kept meaning we had to go to a different level of product and market,
right.
and realizing that immediately and not even attempting to try and swim in that's just untenable.
Yeah.
And so not of late. Of
Hmm.
late, it's stabilized, but I think there was such high subsidies 20 years, and there's still a lot of subsidies, I think, that some of these called low cost regions
Yeah.
are doing, and we're a market economy, and I think that I'm a free market. I'm a believer in the free market.
Yeah, but I mean, competing on price or low price, it's in the long term, I don't think it's ever a winning deal. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not for anybody really, even the customers, because then the corners are cut and quality declines, and you
So
know,
through partnerships, like getting back to the last discussion, we have to cut out all the waste. And so why is transparency important? Because we can see where there's maybe waste, where we can help eliminate waste. So defects are waste.
hmm
Additional
hmm
travel is waste. Over processing is waste.
right,
Having a line stop because you don't have product can put you out of business and create. So we'll fight, tooth and nail with you to eliminate waste, but it's not a commodity. So the cost is lower, and they learn we fight waste together through transparency and through understanding what waste looks like.
right. Then that's saving cost.
So a lot of people understand lean concepts. What I just went over is the 8 forms of waste. The
Yeah,
eighth form is unproductive people, making
right.
sure our people are productive, and that's through training, cross training.
Yeah. Now you've built long-term relationships, some spanning over 40 years, where customers treat you like part of their own company. What do you believe creates that kind of loyalty, and how do you protect it as markets change?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that's interesting about what we do is the longevity of the mechanical designs. If you would come and visit, we had a shop tour yesterday. We had a customer here with us for 8 hours, and I always say the thing that impresses me the most is the longevity of these mechanical designs, parts that we've been making for 40, 50 years. So they are like our children. Every time I go to a trade show, and what we bring our product,
Yeah.
because there's a story behind every part, and some have some really interesting stories, right? So the continuity of the part, and some parts at one point were made in 5 processes and now they're made in 1, right?
Hmm.
And we become an expert, and that their product actually becomes our family. One of our longest customers has been owned by 7 different companies.
Wow.
And there's a whole process every time a company bought and sold that we have to go through when we're dealing with new buyers
Hmm.
on educating them. But we become really an asset because we're the one thing that's constant, right? So America is big on M&A, right?
Yeah.
The product is the stable thing, and following where it goes. We've become much better, I'd say, in the last 25 years of the internet's help, LinkedIn's
Uh-huh.
help, of following where the product goes and then knocking on the door and say, hey, we've made that for 20 years. We know it really well. Could we quote that? You know,
Hmm.
oh, really? Yeah. Oh, they have so much going on, and they find a friend who
Yeah.
been taking
Understands. Yeah.
we've been taking care of the children for all these years, and we love the children. They're like, we would give our lives for these children. We'd like to keep raising these children for you. And in a metaphor, You know,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
I
how
hadn't
that's how
I
we do
hadn't
it.
heard that. I hadn't heard that, like, your product it becomes part of your family. Their product becomes part of your
We understand
family.
the demand
Yeah.
cycles in most ways way better than them. We're starting to
Mhm,
use tools based on rate of change to know if their demand's accelerating or decelerating, because the holy grail now is not always right, but always when you need it,
mhm.
right? Almost like a retail mentality for someone making a custom part for somebody's design. So that's how you really make them sticky,
Yeah,
when it's always right. And they're like, we don't even know, but every time we need it, sometimes you seem to have it, and we can't just make things and never sell them. We'll go, well, that would be it has to be done in a very systematic way.
yeah. Got it. Now, David, succession is a topic most leaders avoid until it's urgent.
Mhm.
Your dad stepped aside and you took ownership, and now your 23-year-old son is joining after earning a supply chain degree and choosing the National Guard for challenge and growth. What
Mhm.
does a healthy transition actually look like? Tell me about that as far as succession.
Yeah, so he's going to have look. The company's going to be a different company 10 years from now. If it's not a different company, we're not doing something right. So, what's a healthy transition look like? Look, over time, he's going to have to make decisions, and he's going to have to bear the benefits or the consequences of his decisions. And allowing him to have space to fail within reason without putting us out of business is important. I was allowed to have leeway, right? And more and more autonomy and decision making and helping. I always think about this. The hardest thing I struggle with is what should never change and what must change.
Hmm.
And keep asking those questions to my son. So I think drilling that into his head, son, there's certain things that should never change about this company.
What are
And,
examples of things that should never change?
well, the absolute commitment to the customers and any
Hmm.
business, right? Always being customer centric, right? Taking care of your people, right? That'll pay dividends, right? Innovating. What we do is we have to innovate, right? So we don't innovate in product design, but we innovate in process implementation.
Yeah,
So, sitting him down, and he'll probably hear that again day one. He's got to probably hear it day 10, day 20, day 100, you know, that
mhm,
look, day one, if you don't like challenges and you don't like implementing new ways of doing things and exploring new ideas, but making sure that the culture of always right, it's got to support that, and it's got to. I would tell him this in the coming years, you have to simplify things. The great engineers, they simplify the process, not complicate it.
yeah,
The government, I try to stay away from dealing directly with them because there's a lot of bureaucracy. Although a lot of our parts are procured indirectly by the government. They constantly add layers and layers. And how can you simplify it? Or to
mhm,
my daughter, who hopefully joins it, how can you make things easier and clearer and easier for everybody to understand? As the parts become more complex, you have to simplify the process, and not make it more complex. Just because you've added another step, does that step add value? Does the customer care about it? So it's not complicated, but it requires a lot of thought, intentionality, and ownership.
yeah, right.
And how do you transfer that to them? And hopefully, it's not going to work. We'll find out in a year. Are you passionate about this? Are you passionate about this innovation, this ongoing quest we have to do it, to simplify what we do and to have better outcomes for our customers?
Right.
So from 100% quality to always when you need it. And there's going to be another thing they demand. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now in the aerospace space, if you can always do it right and always have it to them when they need it, always on time, you turn a lot of heads.
Mhm. Yeah. And so as far as, the change that is good, things that should change, what would those be?
So the technology, we came from a very machine centric background. Like as we were giving the tour yesterday, for a long time, we were really moving the needle with, again, investing into the best equipment, right? And now it's actually how we manage and share information and empower our coworkers. We're really focusing on the whole production management process. I think we can get about 10 to 15% more cost out of our cost of goods, or more ROI on the facility, whatever end you look at it. But it's through we have to train and teach the people doing the work with all the automation we have to think like we think. The guy making the product on the floor has to have the same access to information that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so through data, through what we're doing with data, and it comes to AI, we're using AI quite a bit to simplify things for the dashboards people need to look at. So our mission is that everybody in the organization always knows what the next most important thing is they should be working on at every level.
Yeah.
And we've built up a good capacity of equipment. Our equipment we've done over the last 5-10 years a pretty good capital investment into ops, doing what's called planned obsolescence. We used to hang on to equipment a little longer, and we're good on that. But in the next couple of years, it's with the changeover in the workforce. We have a lot of people retiring. And then my son, very important. I mean, he's going to have to help us bring in. We've already brought in, I call next gen,
Okay.
the next gen crew.
Yeah.
The men and women in their, late 20s or mid 30s. Some of them have been with us already 10, 15 years. They're going to become our senior managers in the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And integrating him with that group, they want to, they don't want to be told what to do, lead this command and control as opposed to lead and inspire. This generation's smart,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they have the ability to learn and use technology,
Yeah.
right? And they can collaborate. We're good too. I mean, we're not that we're bad, but part of the older generation wants to be told what to do.
Right. Yeah.
A few of them, like tell me what to do and I'll go do it. And it's like, no, let's lay out the objective and give you the tools and the information, and you tell us what you need.
Yeah.
And then they,
Right.
then they become complete owners of the process.
Yeah. Well, I think the younger generation have grown up with access to these resources and tools. They know how to use them. They used to going it out and finding the information on their own, where older generations didn't necessarily have all of the information at their fingertips like we do now. And so they didn't have the knowledge or tools how to use the newer tools that we have now. And so it's, I think, intimidating in a way, as
So we're
well.
de-siloing. The last 5 years we've been really de-siloing a lot of the. Used to have like centralized planning for these 4 core departments,
Uh-huh.
and moving that as close to where the product's being made is it's not easy. You need a different mindset now with automation. It used to be when I started, if your arm wasn't moving, you weren't making a part. Now with all the automation, you've taken a lot of the drudgery out, and now they can be more involved in the planning and the organization of their workspaces.
Right. Yeah. Now, for owners whose children don't want the business or who haven't identified a successor, what's your advice to prevent the business from becoming unsellable or overly owner dependent or stuck in the key person trap?
Yeah, so I mean, the goal with any company is any one person doesn't show up tomorrow, including me, and nobody misses them.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's the goal.
Right? Is that the holy grail?
That's the
You,
holy grail.
you arrive, and it takes a lot of care and love for the company to continue to do that, because some people want to create job protection, and some owners do too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end. Like I said, that's the end, right? We're not quite there yet. I mean, when you have 10 people and one person doesn't show up, it's 10% of your workforce. When you have 20, it's 5%.
Yeah.
When you have 50 people, it's 2%, right? Is that right? When it's 100 people, it's 1%.
That's
Now,
right. Yeah.
not every percent has the same influence. Hopefully I'm working mostly on the future, right? So to the owner that wants to sell, you have to scale to the point where you don't matter, where you have, standard work, where you have built a management team,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not there yet. Like if I disappear tomorrow, I would tell my family, you should probably look to sell because my son's not ready. And I have a pretty good management team, but I still do a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope in the next 3 years we can get to that point. We're about 80% there, but not quite there. Yeah, I want this business to go on if I'm not here. And hopefully by the time I'm 60, I'm 54, and I'll be 55 soon. Now I can go away for a month. My dad used to do that. He founded a company in Texas, when I came on, and it was healthy. He had his own thing.
Yeah.
It was, I didn't mention that before, but we founded a company in 1989. I started working full time in 1993, graduated from college that year. And he would go there for like 2 weeks at a time. I remember the first year, he'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go away for 2 weeks, and you got to do that. Like the owner,
Yeah.
you don't know what you have. One of the tips is when you hire people, go leave for a week or two and see what the place looks like when you come
When
back.
you come back,
And
and
you'll
then you
find
know
out,
where you need to yeah.
if you have the right
Right.
people.
Exactly. Know where you need to fill in the gaps and or train up.
So
That's a
that's a tip to me. Like with my son coming, I plan to do some, be more active with our National Trade Association by design.
yeah.
So, we can have conversations for, 20 minutes a day if you want. I'm always reachable by phone, but, leave and let them figure it out.
Yeah. No, some good advice there. Now, finally, you've talked about aligning incentives, creating a vested interest through structures like profit sharing, ESOP models, or other ownership pathways. In your experience, what's the simplest way to start building true ownership thinking across a leadership team?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of different answers, but I guess it's owning. It's look. First of all, in our field, our best employees, they take personal ownership regardless. But there is a difference when they share in the gains, right, or they share in the wins, right. Even financially, I've even seen when my dad made me an owner, I thought like an owner. So we're still working on that. We have a 401k plan, and that the contribution has something to do each year. The level of contribution has to do with the level of our profit from the prior year.
Okay. Yeah.
So, that's one thing we do. The people in the office are incentivized. One of the most important things we do is we bring on new people, new technology, and new product. And so we have people that are given a percentage for the first 2 years of the new product we bring on.
Hmm.
Beyond the sales staff, the people that are getting equal weight are the people that are the lead engineers on the project. So the sales staff, the people that are designing and bringing on and responsible for process implementation, checking, they're actually given as a group the same level of incentive as the sales team's getting. Because in our space,
Wow.
we're not selling out of a catalog where we import it from China.
Right.
So we've had to incentivize the people as much who actually create the process and implement the process as the sales team. The sales team's happy to share some of their commission because they know without the people that actually make the product, nobody gets paid because all
Yeah.
commissions are based on when we get paid.
Right. Yeah. Very true.
So we've taken, a 4 or 5% commission and divided it up, and now it's a bigger pie.
Hmm.
Instead of a smaller pie, and there's more ownership. I look forward to working with our finance manager, who we're now focusing some of his responsibilities away from some of the administrative finance to the operational finance. And as I talk to my son and get his advice, telling him, how can we gamify things? Younger people,
Yeah.
you engage people from gamifying things. I mean, that's a new word that we're talking about, in the process, and also giving them some incentives, whether it's recognition, right? Recognition is for some people a big motivator.
Yeah.
It's not just money. It's what we're trying to do is everyone has a scoreboard like playing a sport. They know if they're, and it's not arbitrary. It's based on the algorithm, right? It's not, oh, I like you, you're doing great, no, it's based on, did we win or lose? If the score's 2-1 and we have the one and they have the two, we
Yeah.
lost. If the other way around, we won.
Yeah.
So which teams are winning, gamifying, giving people some financial incentives, giving them recognition, and giving
Yeah.
them ownership in how the work is done in their area.
Right. So they have a stake in the game, and they also are motivated to make a contribution. And because they are part of
Like,
the team, I mean, really, in the broad sense as well.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a powerful conversation.
great.
Yeah,
My
I really enjoyed that. For those who want to learn more and to reach out, how can they do so?
So www.torometal.com. About us, sales@torometal.com. If there's an inquiry, but come check us out. Come look at our products on the website. We have, about us as our company history. We're getting some great recognition lately and awards from, large OEMs like BAE Systems, Parker Aerospace. And we're trying to keep new content on the site. Not enough as you guys do in what you in your field, but there's a lot of new things happening, and hopefully we share our wins, with
Yeah.
people out there. Because if you really focus and you have continuity in what you do, you'll succeed at whatever your endeavors are.
Yeah, I love that. That's, yeah, good advice, good perspective. Well, thank you again, David. And for those listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Industry Ignited and tune in to the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay bold, and keep igniting industry.